phone rang, gave a number. I answered, and this guy said, you're not going to know who this is. And I said, it's Tony Berlant. He said, God damn it. Anyways, he said, I've got a favor to ask. And I said, after this many years, you're calling your favors in? And he said, yeah. He said, there's a small Sityaki bowl in that auction, and are you going to it? I said, we've already been to it. We previewed it. Okay. Would you mind going back when you go back or whatever, looking at it for me? I said, I already looked at it. What do you want to know? Condition. I said, it's got no plaster in it. It's been broken, one small piece, and the other 4 pieces major. I said, it's got no repaint, Tony. Good enough. He said, thank you, Ron. And that was,
So we're talking about Tony Berlant. We started the show here. And we're on Ron Munn here. And he was, the foremost textile person probably for at least from the 1970s to the 90s. Remember his pottery, a great artist in his own right, contemporary artist, knew all the important people, Jasper Johns and de Kooning, all those individuals. I mean, he was a really, and is still around, one of those guys. So
yeah, great individual. Through the years, no less than 10 wedge weaves I sold him. He was the wedge weave guy, and 90% of the textile dealers out there trying to sell me this crooked rug that was badly woven.
So, I've been trying to get you on this show for, say, 4 years, maybe 5, And the reason why you're so critically important to be in here is you're probably the kingpin of that connection of all the people that you know. You knew or know all the people. You're 86. You've been doing it for 50 plus years? 60 years. You were one of the first people to start dealing in Native American material. And, when did that start? Well, let's just go back. Let's start. You're born in California?
No,
Colorado. You're born in Colorado, but then you moved to California. Southern California?
Yeah.
And how old were you when you did that?
12.
Okay. And when you were a little kid in Colorado, were you interested in stuff like
my dad owned a piece of heavy equipment. At that time, they called him a quickway. And it was for lack of terminology, it was a backhoe mounted on an old Ford truck.
Yeah.
And he did work for the Denver Municipal Water at Cherry Creek. And I would go out and of course that's drains that whole Cherry Creek basin,
right,
which all the Indians inhabited that area. And it was like finding pennies.
Little arrowheads.
He emptied those filtration beds, and that sand was, and I'd just go through it, and I picked up probably over that summer cigar box and a half of broken and whole points, and that's really what
got you going.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said. I mean, I think that's a lot for a lot of different people is they see something that's 1,000 years old by different culture in your area, and you go, what's this and why?
Yeah.
And it gets you excited and interested in, the whole culture of Native Americans. So you moved he gets a different job, I guess, and that's why you go to California?
Yeah. He sold off his equipment, and we moved to California.
Whereabouts? Where are you living?
We lived in a little town called Lemon Grove, which in those days was still a semi-farming community.
Yeah.
But today it's metropolis,
Where is Lemon Grove?
It is about 15 miles east of San Diego.
Oh, wow. Must have been a gorgeous area.
Yeah. And then I lived there even after when I had the gallery in La Mesa and the warehouse in Santee, and my son and daughter were small. We still lived in Santee, which is a suburb again of San Diego.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I built a home. We bought a place originally in Pine Valley, that had a major horse barn on it, but very small living quarters. And we lived in there and in the motorhome and built a large Spanish house. But by then I had been in the business a number of years.
When did you start exactly? What year would you say?
1968.
So how, you were older than the Vietnam War, so you didn't get pulled into that.
No, I did not.
Right.
I was drafted right. Actually, it would have been the Korean War.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was drafted and had these 2 great going away parties.
Yeah.
And got to the railroad station, and in the station, the drill sergeant asked for anybody that had children to step forward, and about a third of them stepped forward. And then they asked anybody whose wives are expecting, and my wife was expecting my daughter. And I stepped forward, and he said, dismissed.
Wow.
So I got 2 parties out of the deal and never went to serve my country. Not that I would have not glad to, but...
Yeah.
And then we had, of course, I had a little gallery in a little building that was outside my home in Pine Valley till I built a big one.
So in 68, though, you go, I'm going to make this as a business?
Yes, I did.
What were you doing before then?
I owned heavy equipment.
Like your dad, kind of.
Yeah.
And so you did that for how long?
I did that primarily. That was my occupation. I had worked for Sears about 4 years in commercial and domestic refrigeration for Sears. And my father-in-law had spent 45 years with the telephone company. So he was an avid big company type of person.
Right.
And he was absolutely convinced. And so...
he said, Sears is for you, son.
Yeah, and so when they took us out to dinner. He was just thrilled to the core. And then little over 4 years later, we were having supper, and I said, I'm going to quit my job at Sears. I've already given notice, and I'm going to be an Indian trader. And I thought he was going to throw up, you know.
Oh, I imagine.
And, I've got 2 little kids and a wife and $600.
And what was it that said to you, oh, I can do this, or I have to do this?
It was a big part of it was the camaraderie.
Yeah.
I was encouraged. Hubert Guy, who founded Indian Art and Indian Trader Paper, had a gallery and his printing operation in La Mesa. And I had my very first gallery down the street from there after. And he was very encouraging. And he had printing the paper at that time. He didn't have the magazine yet. He wielded a fairly large stick.
Right.
And so I got introduced to all of the greats, Paul Dyke, Drew Bax, all the great collectors of that period.
Yes.
In fact, we had a picture at Ashton's show. In my booth was Paul Dyke, Drew Bax. God, it's hell to get old.
Yeah, no, I understand.
The third guy, his son's still in the business.
Well, I don't know who that is, but I probably do.
Massive collection.
Yeah.
Massive. Sold a lot of it to Morningstar. But anyways, those 3 guys are sitting in a booth in Denver, and I'm sitting in the middle, and Hubert's sitting on the end.
And this is 68-ish?
And no, this would be in the early 80s.
Okay.
Early 80s at that period. And they were Drew Back's collection numbered over 5,000 articles of clothing.
Wow.
Paul Dykes is one of the...
Who's the artist?
The great artist, Arizona artist. He's, massive collection, you know. Him and his wife, Star, I've been to their house there north of Camp Verde a number of times.
Yeah. So, but when you started this, it was in 68. That's when you...
Yeah.
And who were the players at that time?
Well, of course, I'd already mentioned Hubert Guy, Paul.
Was Doug Allard doing anything?
That was the year that all three of us, Doug Allard, Ron Milam, and I, all started our auction business.
In 68?
In 68.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, Allard and Milam went on and did, weekly and monthly auctions, and I did about 2 a year as a means of dispersal.
Yeah.
And at that time, none of us called the sales. We all used hired auctioneers. In my case, I used a fellow that Milam had used, and Allard actually used him some. But anyways, he produced an auction, so I would put it together and do a catalog. And then that was the end of it. I had nothing else to do with it whatsoever. And so I'd done it for 3 or 4 years. Well, when it started, it was a way of getting rid of stuff. But after 5 years, it has become part of my, financial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
in that time you were doing the auction, you were still working for Sears or doing
No. I had a gallery. No,
you were there. Okay,
Yeah.
So you had a gallery, and you go, we're getting all this material. We're getting offered so much material. I might as well do an auction to help get rid of it because I can't handle it all.
That was what it did.
Yeah.
That's what it did. And so, we started having the auctions, and my auctioneer, it's hell to get old. I'll think of his name in just a minute.
Yeah.
But anyways, I came in one night, and it's now an important part of my income.
Right.
And he comes, and he drank a little too, and he come in, and he's feeling his way along the wall, and I said, well, what the hell happened? He said, well, I had cataract surgery. He said, I said, well, you can't see. You can't call the auction.
You can't see the buyer.
See. And he said, well, I can sit up there and you clerk for me. And then when somebody bids, you tell me. I said, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. I said, can you see good enough to clerk? Yeah. I said, well, I'll sell. So I got up there, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And I got through it.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I used an auctioneer.
Yeah, because you were a good auctioneer.
Yep.
Yeah. I went to a lot of your auctions.
Yeah.
And you were good at pulling out more money out of me.
It was fun. It was fun.
Calling my name out and saying, one more, Mark.
I was at an auction in California, I don't know, 6 months ago, and I haven't auctioneered in 5 years, once in a while. And this fella got sick, and so his wife come running back, could I relieve him? And I said, oh, crap, It's like riding a bicycle.
You're right
you
back
never
on it.
forget. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in 68, and Allard claimed he started earlier, but I do not remember that.
Yeah.
And so we hired auctioneers, and then Allard started calling the sale himself. And by the way, coming from another auctioneer, he had a way about him. He was an astute auctioneer. He could read the audience. He did a very good job. And then Ron Milam, God loves him, he was a friend for 50 years. And he was not a good auctioneer.
No. Yeah, I went to all of those, so I remember. And so, for those who don't understand, back in those days, no internet, right?
Yep.
The only way you could get this out was by word of mouth or Indian Trader magazine, or, how else did people find out about it? I know you did the catalog.
You just didn't. All the shows at that period of time that were produced by the traders. Doug Allard produced San Francisco and Seattle and Berkeley. I produced San Diego and Las Vegas and Dallas and so on.
And these were shows where you would bring a bunch of dealers together.
All the dealers came together. Ashton, who owned Ashton Galleries, he did he did the show in Beverly Hills and the show in Phoenix, and there were no show promoters, is what I'm saying.
It was a way for all the dealers to come together, and you would act as the main person.
Yeah.
Would you charge them money for booths and things?
Yes.
Too?
Yes. Yeah.
So at least you make some, and then most of the trade at that time was a lot of it, and somewhat still is, to dealer.
Well, and that's an interesting point. I just did a trade with a dealer, and he said, he needed more money out of it. And I said, I can't do it. And he said, well, it's worth this much. I said, I'm 60 years in the business, and I never developed a retail client.
Yeah.
I deal with dealers. They know what they want. Sure, I set my booth up, and I'm very pleasant with the public, and I will gladly sell to you. But it's not how I make a living.
Right.
So anytime they have a show that I can get into that's got a number of dealers in it, it don't make a lot of difference to me where it's at. We just did a show in Moriarty.
Wow.
And it was not advertised, and there was no public, and it was a good show to me because all the dealers came and bought and sold and traded to me.
And how did that little show come about?
It was just a couple of traders got an idea. It primarily is not an Indian show; it's cowboy.
Yeah.
But all the cowboy guys, collect beadwork or put it on their tables in blankets. Most of them don't deal in jewelry or blankets, but pottery, and baskets. But anyways, and it's really interesting. I don't know. I've been in the business some time, and there was a very wealthy man who had made a fortune in furniture. Ray Hollinger was his name, and he'd lost one eye in the war. And I'd had a booth at a show at Berkeley, and in those days I drank a little bit, and I drank, there was no light or darkness. I drank when I worked, what's the problem with that? So Ray come down. I was staying at the Howard Johnson. I was sitting in the restaurant, and he come in, and he said, could I talk to you? And it was real early in the morning, and I was hungover, and I couldn't remember where I'd left my money. And so he gave me 10 steps of what I should do to be an Indian trader. Now, he said, if you don't follow these, you're not going to make it in this business.
If you don't what?
Don't follow these steps.
Oh, I see.
And pretty much religiously, I forgot how, the sequence they came in. But pretty much I followed that. I followed that deal only how you'd like to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. And there were the 10 steps, and I never forget Ray. He's long since gone. And those, you asked earlier, some of the earlier traders, Ray Grant out of Redding, California, a major basket dealer. Of course, Jerry Collins, who run Gila River Indian Arts run it for the tribe. And it gets kind of twilighty when each guy came in, but the great olds of the business, Chris Seltzer, Bob Ashton, who is deceased, Bob Gallegos, who was a banker when I first met him.
Right, yeah, Teller, I think, right?
Yeah.
And Bob Ward, you must have known.
Bob Ward was a very, very close friend. Yeah. Very close friend.
And he had his shows, and he did auctions too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because I knew Bob Ward, but he was kind of ending his career more when I was coming in, I think.
Yeah. There was a fellow, I won't use the name, but anyways, very well-to-do. And Bob and I were across from each other at a show in L.A.
Ward.
Bob Ward. And so he came over and we were talking, and I said, you're never going to sell that feathered Pomo basket for that kind of money, Bob. I said, it was $1,500, and it was a huge boat. I said, it's never going to sell. Yeah. He said, you watch me. So he went over and took the tag off it, marked it to $3,500. And pretty soon this little guy wandered in and wandered around, and the next thing I know, why, Bob's picking up pieces all over. He's taking half his booth and put it over in the corner. And this guy bought it all. Bob Ward had to deliver it to his house. he said he couldn't find the front door. It had so many doors, but he said finally he rang this doorbell, and the butler came, and he said, your service, go to the service entrance.
He was service.
He was.
And we are too. We're all service.
Yeah, we're all service.
Yeah.
We're all service.
That's right.
And that's an important part. That's one of the steps.
I agree.
That's one of the steps.
Yeah.
You are here to serve your client.
Yeah, you are not your client.
Yeah. No.
I agree with that
Yeah.
completely. And so in the 60s, you start your auction, you have a gallery. And how did the business change from like the 60s to the 70s as far as price structure and people getting interested in it and that?
Well, the interest began to grow tremendously. Interesting enough, through the years you keep mementos, and one of them is I produced a little gallery catalog. Was produced in 1970. And in there is a beaded child's vest, retail, gallery, $175.
Yeah.
A 10-inch figured Apache basket was $65. So, and I get accused by my boys and so on that I haven't adjusted to the present. And no, I haven't,
Well, I'm sure. I mean, as an auctioneer, you know exactly what the price structure is going to be.
Yeah.
You know, there may be a point when you don't do the auction anymore and someone else is doing it that changes. But I'm sure you're doing shows. You still have a good sense of what.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that is interesting. You asked in the 70s. No matter what it was, whether it was Hopi or Alaskan or Mesoamerican, it just went like this. Every year it went up a little bit
more.
Today we have these massive rising and falling. And a great deal of that I attribute to the galleries. They do these massive shows on, say, child's blankets, and to get them, they're running all over town and paying unprecedented prices to get the pieces.
Right.
And then a short period after that, they fall off and something else becomes new. It never was that way in the early days.
Well, you have information and content. And I would push back a little bit on that because I'd say that sometimes those shows actually do change the market and continue to change it for a period of time.
Oh, there is no question, Mark.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. It's so often you look at the auction records, and I'm in a number of them, but it is the shows and the auctions that set the tempo of price, price structure.
Yeah, that's right.
The galleries are at the very tip. They're offering the product in a very, astute setting, but from there, the next two pushers of the market are the shows and auctions, and right now auctions are just
they get more than the galleries.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I lived in Casa Grande for 4 years, and one of the bigger auction houses is located there. And for the last 2 years, I didn't go. There was no point in it.
Yeah.
Mark, I couldn't buy. The stuff was bringing more than I could sell it for.
Right.
So, what do you do then?
Yeah.
What you do is you go to him and consign.
You go to the auction. Yeah. I mean, you saw, as I did, how the internet changed things.
The internet, absolutely. My auction company, we have on 2 occasions, I had 2 auctions that grossed more than $1 million with American Indian. We're not talking about guns or any fine, intrinsic metal or diamonds. It was American Indian, and I had 2 auctions that broke that, 3-day auctions on a weekend, and both of them broke $1 million. Today, some of those pieces are just, beyond belief. What?
Yeah, like a Tony Day bear or a Tony Day turtle.
Yeah,
I remember you selling a few of those. I remember buying a few of those things.
Yeah. We...
and wondering, what the hell am I doing paying so much money for that?
I stayed in Ashton, Robert Ashton, who owned Ashton Galleries in Scottsdale's guest house. And he built it, and it had kind of a central room and then a bedroom on each side of it with a small kitchenette. And he said, you could have a house guest or something to that effect. I didn't pay any attention. So the next morning I got up, made coffee, and I'm sitting out there in the common room, and out walks the door out. Tony Day comes out, and he sits down at the table, and we spoke. Of course, I knew Tony. And so he said, Mr. Munn, would you be interested in a piece of pottery? And I thought, what the hell am I going to do with that? How am I going to get out of this? So anyways, he brought this small red bowl in with a sgraffitoed Vanyu on it with a little turquoise eye. And he said, these normally sell at that time for $1,000. Yeah. He said I could wholesale. I overspent a little bit last night. I could sell it for $300. I said, I didn't say to him, I looked like that big idiot. No, I said, I'm not interested, Tony. So we went into breakfast with Ashton and his wife. And so Tony brought the pot in, and he told Ashton, I offered this to Mr. Munn for $300, and he didn't want it. Bob said, I'll write you a check for $1,000. And that's what opened my eyes. What am I missing here?
Yeah.
But the real eye-opener in the area of pottery was the covered wagon.
Yeah. Manny.
Yeah, Manny Goodman's collection. When it was done, we grossed almost $2 million out of that.
Yeah. So you handled that. And that was a covered wagon. That was in Old Town, Albuquerque, and they had been in the business forever. Manny
1936.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he worked till he was in his 90s.
Yep.
And I remember buying Maria Potts from there when I wasn't even in the business.
Yeah.
Because she had a relationship with Tony and Maria. And
she had a very good, she would, and Ann and
Annie was her name, right?
Ann and I never did get along.
Yeah.
She was just, I couldn't get along with Ann. I got along with Manny, but Ann, I couldn't get along, And I can remember when we did the covered wagon, it was handled by a niece, Elizabeth, and anyways, she mentioned to us that she was having some problems with Mr. Goodman. He was the end. He'd done it since 1936,
right? And
he was really struggling, to give everything up.
I'm sure.
She said, "Do you have any suggestions?" And I said, "Let me talk with him." So he come hobbling around that next day, and I said, "You know what, Mr. Goodman?" I said, "You ought to pick out a few pieces and just, set them back. And when he couldn't drive anymore. I said, you can hire a driver and take you on the road and you can, Oh, he said, my God, good. So we went up 2 weeks later to pick another load up from Liz at the covered wagon, and she took me aside and took me into a side room, and she said, see all these trunks here? And they were big metal trunks. I said, oh, yeah, are we taking all those? No, you're not taking them. She said, those are the ones that you told Manny to set aside for when he goes on the road, Ron. And she said, he wears Depends. I won't rely on you anymore. But we did get, and we got it all in the end anyways.
Yeah.
But it helped Manny at the time,
Yes, yeah. Well, they're struggling, especially a man like that.
Yep.
Because he spent every day and behind that counter with a scar in his mouth, chewing on it.
Yep.
I remember him, barely tall enough to get over it.
And you'd go to deal with them, and Ann was always in the back, the gallery area. And they were good and bad cop. And bad cop. They would gang up on you, and the next thing you knew, you got,
I always found her agreeable. Again, I'm spending money, and I'm a collector at that point. I'm not dealing.
She was a hard nose. I didn't really get along with her as well as I did Manny.
Who were some of the other people that you found interesting in this business that you dealt with over the years?
One of them was Jay Evans.
Yeah, what a great person he was.
And I had an apartment. We had a common porch between them behind the Rainbow Man. And I had Bob Ashton, Pete Hester, and I rented one side, and Bob Vandenberg and Jay Evans rented the other side. And it became, before the advent of Terry's show opening in Albuquerque, you had no way to know where's Mark Sublette staying? I want to get a hold of him. Well, nobody knew. See, right. So most common place was the apartments, and everybody as you came into town, you stopped there.
Yeah, that's true.
And you would go in and say, "Hi, I'm Mark, and we're staying up at Galisteo or wherever it is." Well, of course, when you first get to town, my first question is, "Oh, great! I'm glad you're staying up at Galisteo. What did you bring?"
Yeah.
See, so we were getting first look at tremendous amounts of product, and between 5 of us back there, we did tremendous business.
I'm sure.
But one of the great guys of the business is Jay Evans.
Yeah, Jay was very interesting. And I went back to that apartment on many occasions.
Oh, yeah.
And sat with Jay.
Yeah.
As he was a very quiet man who was very knowledgeable in all things native, especially jewelry. And I'd ask him a question. "What do you think about this one, Jay?" And he'd go, "Well, it's okay." It's his stuff he's selling. And he would be honest and say, this you might do okay with this one. It's maybe not a great one, but here's a better one. You might like this, and here's why. And and he wouldn't say but 4 words, but you knew they were all true.
Yeah. We would sit back there, and if the porch light was off, why, we could sit in the dark, and everybody thought we'd gone to bed.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great stories. Like I say, Pete wasn't there for some reason that night. And we were on our side, and we had sat in the dark for an hour or so, Jay and Bob Ashton and I. And Bob went from mediumly overweight to heavily overweight, And so anyways, he was in one of the heavier versions. And so we got in bed, and it turned out my bed was right up against the window that went out on the porch. And so I was laying there, and I heard a noise on the porch, and I didn't think anything of it. And I looked across the room, and I could see that Ashton had set up, looking around. I said, "Do we have a problem?" And he said, "I think somebody's on the porch." So I said, "Okay." So we both trounced out in our underwear to look out our screen door. Well, Jay had put a security door in. And this guy's down on his hands and knees, and he's pushed a screwdriver through the screen and popped the lock. And he reaches up to open the door. Well, Bob was wearing white boxers, and that's all he had on. And because I didn't have my gun with me, I just reached over and picked up a Zuni lance that was in the corner of the building there, the living room. And I'm behind him with the lance, see? And he flicks the light on, says, "You got it open, huh?" And starts out. Well, he didn't unlock the screen door. So when he hit the screen door, he bounced back. He got about 3 jabs from my lance from behind, and he went right through the screen door. So this potential thief ran down the alley all the way down to Palace. It's a long alley. And so we're standing on the porch, and I'm standing there holding this lance, and here's Bob, overweight in white boxers, and this thief calls out, "Oh," he said, "it's Captain Ahab and Moby Dick." And then at that time, Jay come out, and he said, "What's going on?" And I said, Bob said, "That guy was trying to break in to your apartment. And he had 50 concha belts on the arm of the couch on the end." And Jay says, Bob said, "You got your piece?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Squeeze a shot over his head real up high and show him we mean business." So Jay raised his gun and the cylinder fell out on the floor. So that's the story of the thief at the apartment.
And Captain Ahab.
Yeah, Captain Ahab, Moby Dick.
So, a few stories in there. You were going to tell me one about a Sharp painting that you had had.
Yeah.
So Joseph Henry Sharp's a Taos founder. Very valuable art.
Yeah.
You know,
Hubert Guy and I, the founder of Indian Trader Paper and co-founder of Indian Art Magazine, was a close friend. And as I said earlier, it was the traders that produced the shows. So we got an idea to have a show in San Diego. So Hubert was really a writer, an author. He did all the articles for his paper. Well, anyways, we decided to co-produce this show. And he was a recovering alcoholic. He hadn't drank in 25 years. But once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. So apparently this show just created such pressure that
he drank.
He all of a sudden snapped. And so the night before the opening of the show, he decides to go on a liquor binge. So then we're now fast forward to the morning of the show, and he's laid the booths out and drew them out on paper. And apparently he read the wrong measurements, and we are short one booth at the end of each row, and we're completely sold out. So I'm in the back trying to find places to put these booths. And my wife came back. She was taking the money up front and went up. And she said there's a line that goes out the lobby for free appraisals. Well, Hubert had put in the paper free appraisals. And my God, anyways, to shorten the story some, I'm sitting there, and a close and dear friend, Norm Moldenhauer, who owned Moldenhauer Saddlery, was standing there, and he was a Western art dealer. So this lady come up, she said, I have a painting. Oh, I said, we don't do paintings. No. She said, in the paper, the ad said you did paintings. I said, I'm going to kill him. Hubert was not there. So I said, Norman, can you help me out? Can you go out and look at this woman's painting? So I continued helping people there for free appraisal. Pretty soon he comes back, and I said, how'd that go? And he said, I couldn't help her. I said, well, you're no help at all. So she's back in line. So pretty soon she gets up there, and she said, he couldn't help me. So I said, let's go look at the painting. So we walked out. She's got it in the trunk of this old car, and it's huge. It's huge. And it's a Joseph Sharp, you know. So in brief conversation with her, she said, I'm selling it for one of Joseph's heirs. I said, okay. And she said, I had Thackeray Gallery, which was the major art gallery in San Diego, look at it.
Right.
And they appraised it at $500. And this is before the Taos founders really took off.
Was this like the early 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I said, well, it's a $5,000 painting. Oh, she said, okay, thank you. So took care of that. So I had a secretary, and my gallery at the time in La Mesa was upstairs. And this elderly woman lugged this 40 by, or whatever, I think it was a 40 by 60, up the stairs. And my secretary, who was dizzy, told her, no, we don't buy those. I wanted to kill the secretary. Well, anyways, 2 days later, she didn't carry the painting up, but she showed up, and she said she wanted me to handle the sale of this painting.
Yeah.
So we took it on consignment at $5,000. Nobody wanted it. So I just, decided that to back the story up a little bit. When she brought it back the second time, she didn't have the paperwork with her. There is a typed letter on presidential stationery that Roosevelt has commissioned Joseph Sharp to paint the end of the Great Indian period.
Yeah, it would have been Teddy Roosevelt, probably.
And in the letter, he says the Smithsonian, who got first pick of the paintings, picked the wrong one. He said, First Snow on the Crow Encampment is the best painting I think you've ever done. Well, that is the painting I had. Oh, wow. It's also on the cover of his brochure in 1929, First Snow on the Crow Encampment, and it's from the family. So nobody wants it. So she showed up, I don't know, 4 or 5 months later, and I just bought a collection of beadwork and sold quite a bit off. And she said, we need to sell the painting, so I need to pick it up from you. Less my commission made it $3,900 or something. I just wrote her a check, took the painting home, hung it in my living room. My wife's a very good housekeeper, and when it got cobwebs across it, I asked my wife. She didn't really care for the painting, and she said, now that you asked, no, I don't. So the years went by, and I had a store in Santa Fe in conjunction with Jim Clark and Robert Young, founder of El Furrow, and Candy Powers. There were 4 of us in the old Delgado house. Mm-hmm. But Jim had a gallery down the street, which he sold art, his regular art gallery. And so, it was a partner. So I never knocked. I never worried about a secretary. I just walked in the office. So I walk in there, and the secretary says, no, he's got to be. I said, he'll see me. So I just went on in, and there's a young fellow sitting there. And so I sit down, and we're talking, and Jim's going to produce this great Western art show.
And who is this Jim?
Jim Clark.
Okay.
In Santa Fe.
Yeah.
And it was a great show. The requirement was that if you had the art, he picked galleries that represented specific artists, and they asked that you have that artist present in your booth, and that's the way the show was. But in one corner, this young fellow that was in his office was going to hang some old paintings, So Jim, my partner, says, you ought to consign that Sharp painting you have. So this young fellow turns to me and says, you have a Joseph Sharp? I said, yeah. And can I ask you anything about it? I said, sure. He said, what? I said, it's titled First Snow on the Crow Encampment.
Right.
And this fellow says, you don't have it. That's a reproduction. It's in a museum. So he gets up and stomps out of the office. So I said to Jim, I said, do me a favor, don't introduce me to any of your smart-mouthed young friends anymore. So I went back down the street to our store. That was 20 minutes. Phone rings, and Jim said, the fellow's here, and he can't find it. That painting's not in any museum anywhere. So went back and arranged it, and he hung it in the show in Santa Fe at $20,000. Mm-hmm. Did not sell.
Mm-hmm. What year would this have been, do you think?
Had to be the early 80s, I think. Or late 70s, mid-70s. Anyways, didn't sell. So I took it down. I'd flown it over there, so I put it in a box, and he showed up, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, the painting didn't sell. I'm taking it back. No, he said, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it. So he bought it. And he kept it for almost 10 years. He thought that much of it. And then he sold it, and it resold again, and resold again. And then it resold the last time close to $1 million.
Yeah. Timing. It's like NVIDIA, the stock.
The young fellow's name was Gerald Peters.
Ah, that's so funny. So Jerry knew it was great. And he probably at some point, when it was resold, he may have had a part of those too.
Yeah, probably. But it was a great painting.
Yeah, that's funny. So Gerald Peterson. So that's when he was really starting.
Absolutely.
To get
he had no gallery, no nothing.
Right.
In fact, less the commission. His commission was 25%. And so he owed me $15,000 for the Joseph Sharp. And he only had 10 of it. I had to give him 30 days time
Yeah.
to get the other 5. Yeah. So it's that long ago.
Well, we all start off there at some point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We all do.
Including me. I'm sure you saw me at some point and go, I don't know if this kid's going to make it.
Well, there's a lot of them that didn't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them that didn't. But I have no end of respect for, like Bob Gallegos
Yeah.
and Terry DeWalt. They both were able to make a living in American Indian, but dealing in contemporary, replaceable pieces. And so both of them, on the other side of the coin, became collectors. And they collected and hoarded the great stuff. Yeah. And then eventually, both of them, although Terry still does his Papago basket business.
Yeah, no, he's on the Tohoto O'odham reservation once a week.
Yep.
And
yep.
And he's not really making much money. He does that for the people.
No, but he does it more for the Indians.
Yeah, he does it for the people.
Yep. Yeah, that's sure. Right.
Yeah,
that's
he has
right.
a great relationship with these people.
Yeah.
They're like family to him, and vice versa, I think. And that's one of the beautiful things about this business. It's not just dealing in older material, which is wonderful, but you also get to deal with living contemporary artists that, take it to a different world, a different place.
No.
The Tony Abedas of the world and the Shanta Vigay.
My God, what a first-class individual Tony is.
Yeah.
I love, visiting with him.
Yeah, he's so knowledgeable.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows contemporary as well as anyone, and he knows antique and historic material as well.
Absolutely. We had a painting. He had bought 2 at auction by his father.
Yeah.
And Hasso did. And so then we got one in, and he said for its size, it was one of his best dad's paintings. And it was a period that he was a little short of money. So he consigned quite a bit of stuff to auction so he could use that money towards the purchase of it. And so he couldn't, for some reason, he had some tribal thing, I don't know what, couldn't be at the auction, so he left an absentee bid on it, maximum that he was willing to go. And it went right to the maximum on his bid, and he's got it. And just as I'm ready to strike its sale, we had a doctor who lived in Rio Rancho slowly put his card up and bid $500 more. Well, Tony was just sick,
Sure.
And he said, why didn't you go more? Tony, I said, I can't. I've got boundaries. I've got restrictions. The maximum it said on that piece of paper was $6,000.
Right.
And if I bent the rule for you, then everybody down the road in the Moccasin Telegraph, they tell everything that is to be told, So somebody's going to find out that and so I said I just couldn't. So, and as far as I know, he never got the painting. He tried.
Yeah. Well, he'll end up with it.
Yeah.
He loves his father's work.
Yeah.
And all sorts of Native American painters. Yeah. No, he's really an erudite when it comes to that. So, what have you learned, do you think, in these 60 years of doing this business? That's a hard question. I know.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is.
Well, the first thing, one of the rules that we had applied, that I talked about, Ray Hollinger, said to me, he said, probably you're never going to have as much money as a wealthy person. So he said, the way you beat wealthy people is with knowledge. So for me, the single greatest thing about the business is it has been from the very beginning and still today a continuous quest for knowledge.
Right.
I used to be, I try to learn 10 things a day. Well, you don't keep track of it, but and the people, the first Americans that we're representing, their love for what they've made, and my love for that is the second thing that's most important to me. Yeah.
The natives.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And learning. Yeah. And history too, which is part of the learning process.
Oh, well, you
can't understand this material or handle it or deal in it
absolutely
if you don't
not
understand the true history.
Yeah.
You know.
Unless you connect it to a period of time.
Yeah.
And connecting it to a period of time sends you on a quest. What happened during that period of time?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great. And then I think it's interesting as a dealer. Now I'm learning more from native voices too that say, oh, well, this is how you saw it, which is great. But there's also this other component that you may not have understood.
Absolutely.
And, you need to be taking that into consideration too
Yeah.
when you're talking about these pieces, because we may see it differently. And hey, guess what? We
Your
may,
interpretation of the piece,
Yeah, exactly.
And once again, very quickly, restoration is always something that's brought up. And I've always had a rule that if the pot's broken or the Navajo rug has a hole in it, the artist that created it didn't mean it to be viewed that way.
Right.
Okay. So if possible, it should be put back within reason.
Right.
With the exception of native wear.
I agree. Ethnographic wear should never be touched.
Never touch it.
Yeah.
Never. I sold a great child's blanket, and when you put it in the sun, you could see the oil of where it laid around the child's shoulders. And the dealer that bought it could not wait to get that out of it.
Yeah.
That's part of the mystique. That's part of the art of that piece.
History.
Damage, most of the time done by white people. But you take a great Zuni jar with ladleware.
I've got one out there.
Yeah.
Completely worn down to the nub, and I love it.
Yeah, you do not take that
I don't think
away.
I would sell it to somebody who would fix it.
Oh, no,
I would have to
no.
decline.
So there's a and how much restoration becomes a problem.
Yeah.
I was involved in that Ute first phase
Yeah.
that came out, and I've been involved in other pots, membrace, Tularosa animal effigies that all they found was the head, and all of a sudden that's fakery.
Yeah.
That's fakery.
Yeah, because it's not really what it is.
No, it is not. How do you interpret how the Indian painted the body when you don't have that body or pieces of it at least to see?
Yeah.
No, it's just I don't know. And every one of us, because we're individuals, we have different beliefs in God and different political beliefs, and through different eyes do we look at art. Yeah. Everybody looks at a piece of art in a different way.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, and your culture often will dictate how you see it and understand.
And like you'd mentioned earlier, the Native American, the first American, looks through entirely different eyes from a different perspective. That's totally. Right. And if you can visit, and if you do not become offensive, you can ease that out of them. So it is part of that learning process.
Yes, they'll share what they want to.
Absolutely.
Or what they feel you need to know.
And not trying to talk about their religious stuff, you know.
Yeah. No, I think it's very important as dealers in historic material that we take their voices very seriously.
Yeah. No, I don't. It's their art. It's not ours. It's their art.
That's correct.
We are nothing more than representatives of it,
But we love it.
We do love it. We love every piece of it. And I know that one of the major dealers was in poor health. And he came to me and he asked me if I thought his son would be able to continue on. I said, let me think on that. And so I thought for a day or two. And so I seen him again. And I said, I don't think so. I said, for you and I, Steve, it's a way of life. It's not a job. But for your son, I'm afraid it'll be a job. Now, he's proved me somewhat wrong. He's done quite well. But it is a love of the art itself and the people that made it that makes my job unbelievably easy. Yeah. Unbelievably easy.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
You have to have that passion.
Yeah.
And you'll notice in our profession, nobody retires.
No.
Because they don't want to. They want to be a part.
No. We drag ourselves around at 86.
Right. Yeah, you'll be at a show probably in a week, right? You're going to be in Albuquerque at the
we'll
Terry
be setting
Schumacher.
up. And it's what we do. Okay, we're on our way home back to New Mexico today. We're going to unload the truck tomorrow and come back to Arizona the next day. We've got a piece that a client wants to see. It is for the love of being able to place that piece and the money that it's going to make us. That's how we live.
Yeah.
There's got to be something for us in the end, you know.
Well, you have to make a living.
Yeah.
Or you can't do it.
Yeah.
And so where do you see this business in 10 years? You're 86. You know, what is it going to exist the same way? I mean, there's a lot of dealers that are, 75 to 90.
Yeah. No, it's not going to be the same. It is not going to be the same. Our nation's not the same. You cannot open your phone on Facebook that it doesn't say, I wish we would go back to the way we were in the 60s. That's not how progress works.
Right.
That's not. And our business is in terrible influx and changing. And
because people are getting old and dying.
Yeah. Not only is the dealers getting old, but the collectors are all getting old. So we're having to introduce new clients to the marketplace. And right now at this period, it's a tough thing because they want press tin toys from Japan, robots from.
Right.
They don't. What the hell is that ugly thing? A great part of the mystique of our business, we connect it to the American West and its development, and we are of that period, that school period, where our parents took us to the Grand Canyon, and going there, we stopped at Colorado River and bought little Mojave dolls from Annie Field's daughter and broke the heads off them and threw them away, that all part of making me a collector or a dealer. That's gone. That's gone. You could not turn the television on that there wasn't a Western on there.
Yeah.
So that introduced a whole generation of people that wanted to collect American Indian or Western items or another field, and they're all in the same league.
Right.
They're not art, but they are, utilitarian pieces. But no, I wished I could answer where we're going to be in 10 years. But I think the business will continue.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're going to have to adjust and change. I won't. I'll be gone. But my son and my grandsons, they're all in the business. And that's something else that has to be brought to attention. We as dealers are doing nothing to introduce a young generation to our business.
I'll take exception to that.
Yeah.
Because this is what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's critically important.
Absolutely.
So this podcast reached people that might be in their age when you started. You started in your 30s. I started in my early 30s and go, oh, this is a real business that we could do and get to deal with indigenous art, learn history, and have a business. Yeah. And I think you're right. We have to have dealers should be, just like you're here, giving this, your history of what you did and how you see the world, somebody may look at it and go, well, that's a pretty interesting field.
Yeah.
How can I be a part of that?
Yeah, I think it's important, but I think, we have got now, I have there's going to be a pretty large auction in Santa Fe during Terry's show, first week August. And the auctioneer that's calling that sale's my grandson. So
So they're there.
Michael Higgins' son is involved in the business.
Yeah, on an academic.
Yeah, on an academic
my
level.
son is going to be taking this business over at some point as well.
But, now my son's son is coming to the show, and he's going up to the auction with us, and he's being brought in to replace me. He's going to be my replacement.
Yes.
Do I think he loves it and it's a way of life? Not yet.
Yeah.
But when we get done with him, it will be. But, we have got to do better especially those of us that got the season on us, to encourage at any time, especially through podcasts, through galleries,
Right.
through the shows. Whenever I get a young, we set up at Round Top, and I've got a kid, he's about 23, 24. He's there every show.
Yep.
He's almost to drive you to drink, but God loves him. He comes every time. His mother brings him, and it's just a thrill to be able to see somebody that young with that amount of interest.
He gets it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think all of us got so interested in this business? Because we're all kind of from that time frame age-wise. What was it that made us all at the same time go, God, we want to be a part of Native American arts?
Yeah, I think it goes back to cowboys and Indians playing them when you're a child.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to where we were raised at. I didn't live in a city, hardly ever. I mean, Lemon Grove we had a house quite a ways out, but just like today, we talked about the cowboy, and now it's such a profession. My God, one of the top bull riders is from New York. Another one's from Florida. They they didn't grow up in the West.
Right.
So they have learned it some way, and the same thing applies to us. I think each one of us developed a love for the art form, first of all.
Yes.
Yeah,
and I think it helps for me. I grew up in New Mexico.
Yeah.
I started collecting when I was a little kid.
Yep.
We only had one museum in our whole town, and it wasn't an art museum. It was the Blackwater Draw Museum, which was all Paleolithic Clovis man stuff that you could go and learn about history of, the first inhabitants of America. Mm. And that was the thing that really drove me to be interested, I think, in this field. I think it's a lot of that has to do with a lot of individuals. I think a lot of them, too, whatever that Vietnam experience was, when they were done with it, then rock and roll, which embraced Native American culture and jewelry and all that. I think it all just kind of snowballed with a young generation. Because you think about it, Bob Gallegos, he's like in his early 20s, and Celso's in his 20s. I mean, they're all early getting through that, and then, it's an independent lifestyle to have your own business.
Oh, yeah. And I think a great deal of us, the art form is close to the earth.
Yeah.
It is close to the earth. And like you mentioned, Vietnam, when you seen that side of the world, you wanted to be closer to the earth. The Korean, the same thing. There are many of us are old enough to have been veterans of the Korean War, And I think it's a peaceful side of life,
Yes.
The American Indian views life entirely different than we do.
It's all about the earth.
Yeah,
Right.
It's all about earth. And they don't own it, see?
No, and they know.
And they don't understand, this 2 acres I'm trying to buy, they don't understand that. To them, earth is earth, and it's owned by Mother Earth, and they're there to share it, And so, there are a lot of complications, but I think one of the major things is the art form is very close to the earth.
Yeah.
And for that, if you like that, then you're going to like American Indian art.
I mean, hold a pot in your hand.
Yeah.
It's completely of the earth.
Yeah.
Right. So is there anything we missed or you want to talk and share that we haven't talked about?
I don't think so. You cannot sit for an hour and talk about a lifetime.
No.
You need a lifetime to talk about a lifetime. But we've hit some of the high spots, and we've missed a lot of them.
What have we missed?
Oh, I don't know. When I get in the truck out there, my son said, "Did you tell him about this, or did you do that?" No. But I think they've given an idea of my feeling and my beliefs in the
and
business.
the people you've met.
Yeah. and the people that I've met.
Which again, I think is a lot of this business too, is you get to meet these people and they do become part of a culture for yourself, right? I mean, your best friends are probably in this business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, and you ask in another 10 years. I had mentioned to you earlier before we started that I did a show a month ago, and I knew probably half the dealers in the show. At one time, there was not a show in the United States that I did not know the name of every dealer in that show.
Oh, I'm sure.
Changing times. You know, there's a new wave coming in. And I understand that I'm the one that's, you know, I can see light at the end of the tunnel and it's getting brighter all the time.
My wife says, follow the light.
Yeah. But no, I think we've covered it. I think we've done a real good job, you know. Yeah. And I really appreciate you asking me to do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're a very important cog in the wheel.
And I'm glad I got to do it, you know.
Well, you were one of the very first. 68 is a very early to be in this business. You know, that's the beginning.
One more quick story. Don Bennett, who produced...
Right. We haven't talked about Don.
And Don and I were very close friends. And but anyways, we were at one of his early shows, and he asked, we were setting up, and there was an empty booth, and he said, could I get everybody, the dinosaurs of the business, over here in this booth and take a picture? So he did. He did that. And of course, Rex Aerosmith was in the business. So we're all talking. I started in 68. Well, I didn't start till 72. And Rex said, I started in 57.
Yeah,
you know?
He did.
But anyways, there's 9 of us in the photograph, and I'm the only one living.
Oh, wow. Do you remember the other people that are in there?
Yeah.
Who are they?
It was, let's see, Doug Allard, Ron Munn, Bob Ward.
Rex Aerosmith.
Pardon?
Rex Aerosmith.
Rex Aerosmith.
You.
God, me. Oh.
Did Don get in the shot too?
No. No, Don came...
A little later.
Yeah, a little later. Oh, what the hell? I picture him. Fresno.
Don't know.
Basket dealer.
Oh, I know who you're talking
Leon Taylor.
Leon
Taylor's there. Rex Aerosmith, as I said. Anyways, I'll have to get the picture.
Do you
out.
have a picture?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you should give me a copy of it. We'll put it on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, get a copy.
It's just a Polaroid. That's
okay.
what he took. But
and what year would have that been? Do you have any idea?
His early 70s.
The dinosaurs of the early 70s.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting that Bennett had the thought to go, this is important to do.
Yeah.
You know, even at that time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he did a great deal. He was, you know, he could be a stinker. Him and I had a falling out, but, you know, well,
you competed against each other in some
and but, you know, you can compete and still like somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
You don't have to have animosity just because you compete.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it does happen occasionally.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah. I have very fond memories for Don. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, he came to my house before I even had a gallery buying rugs, you know, and so I just, you know, he was always very generous to me. Yeah. But we all have our different experiences.
Oh, yeah. We all do. Yeah. We all do. Yep.
Well, it's a great story. You got a lot of great stories. I've heard him. I've known you for a long time.
Oh, yeah. My God.
I've known you for over 30 years.
35 years at least,
exactly.
Mark. At least. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We always used to look forward to going to those auctions because they would be filled with people, collectors primarily, you know, and a lot of dealers, but there'd be a lot of collectors there too.
A tremendous amount. And a lot of beginning collectors.
Yeah,
there are a lot of collectors out there today. Thank God that I helped get started.
Yeah.
You know,
the rooms would be packed.
Yep.
And you'd put this very nice catalog, expensive catalog out. I'm probably sure have some somewhere still.
Yeah.
But
it's when it's done, it has been a great journey, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Nice.
You know.
Yeah.
But the enjoyment has been derived from two sources. One, the great material that I've been able to find and handle, and the great people that I've got to meet.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Great people.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, now you're a part of the podcast of all those great people. I'll let you get back.
All
We're
right.
going to go head to New Mexico.
All righty.
All right, Ron.
Thank you,
Real
Mark.
nice.
Uh-huh.
All right, Ron Munn.